In this walkthrough video, we're going to take a look at how you can leverage Nintex Workflow Cloud and Nintex Forms to build and implement a job application form within your website. In this particular example, we're going to be taking a look at a job application for some county jobs, and this might be something that you can leverage within a local government website. While we will be walking through both the form and the actions in this workflow that you see here, if you'd like to download a copy of this workflow, you can find it on the Nintex Process Accelerator Gallery. If you go to gallery.nintex.com, select Workflows, and then making sure that you're on Nintex Workflow Cloud, if you scroll down, you should find our county job application template. You can download this directly into your NWC tenant and follow along. Back here on the workflow design canvas, as you can see, the workflow is going to start with a form, and then we'll go ahead and send a notification to our applicant letting them know that we've received their application. We are going to be logging some information back to SharePoint Online, and then we enter a state machine. State machines within Nintex Workflow Cloud are constructs that allow you to move between various different stages or branches, and in this case, we have a three-tiered approval process. The applicant will first be reviewed by HR, and then a hiring manager, and finally a team lead. Based on the outcome of the various different approvals, we then have different branches that the workflow can go down. We'll go ahead and dive into those a little bit later in the walkthrough. Let's go ahead and take a look at our form. If we go up to our start event, and we first want to make sure that our configuration is set to anyone with the form URL. This is important as we want to be able to display this form on a public website. If we select Design Form, this will open the Nintex Form design canvas. As you can see, this form is really broken into two different parts. The first is going to be our position selection with our different job descriptions, and the second will be the employment application. If we start here in our position selection and scroll down, we can see that we've added various different job descriptions to this page. These were all added using label controls, and we simply entered our rich text descriptions into those label controls. If we needed to make any changes to these descriptions in the future, we could simply select the label control, open our rich text editor, and make those adjustments as needed. Now, in this example, we don't want to show all of these job descriptions at the same time. We only want to show the position that they are actually interested in applying to. To facilitate this, we've added the different job titles into a choice control that the user can then select from. And if we go and take a look at the preview, what we can see is that when we select a job title, that related description will then appear on our form. But how did we get from the layout that was shown in the designer to what we're seeing in preview? Well, this was accomplished using rules within Nintex Forms. Among other dynamic capabilities, rules within Nintex Forms allow you to show and hide controls based on another control's selected value. If we select the Rules tab, and then we have our three Show Job Description rules. If we select into one of these, we can see that rules within Nintex Forms are really set up as an if-then statement. In this case, we say, if the position you are interested for equals the juvenile detention relief worker, then the juvenile detention relief worker description will be visible, else the juvenile detention relief worker will not be visible. And we've replicated this logic for the other positions on our form. Let's move back over to the Preview tab and see how the other components of this form work. If we select our position, we do need to check that this is the position that we'd like to apply for. For that toggle, we're leveraging a yes-no control. And then we select Next, and this will take us to our employment application details. If you'd like to configure additional pages, you can do this back in the designer, select Configure Pages, and from this configuration panel, you can add additional pages, remove existing pages, change the navigation layout, or change whether the navigation flow is sequential or not sequential, meaning you could move between any of your pages without needing to go in order. In this case, we'll go ahead and keep our sequential flow and horizontal navigation. On our employment application page, we start with a label control that provides some details and instructions to the user. We then move to our applicant information. You'll notice that the first two controls under applicant information are actually grayed out. And the reason for this is that we are actually pulling the position applying for details from our first page. And if we jump back into preview, we can see that when we select a job from our dropdown, that title will be pulled automatically into the position applying for field. You'll also notice that the current date was also populated automatically. To accomplish this functionality, we leveraged a combination of default values and rules. If we take a look at the position applying for control, you'll notice that this control does not have a default value. And so to populate that information from the first page to the second, we're actually going to leverage another rule. Rules can not only show and hide controls on the form, you can also dynamically update values based on control selections. On our Rules tab, if we select Set Position Applying For, we can again see the if-then format of if the confirmed position is yes, then our position applying for control will be updated with a specific value. In this case, we're pulling that value from another form control, the which position are you interested in, which was selected on that first page. Now, if we go back and look at our designer and select current date, in this instance, we can see that we're using a default value. And in this case, we have populated it with a function of date now. You'll notice that the current date control is a date time control and the position applying for is a text short control, and that most of the other controls within this applicant information section are also going to be text short controls. This is true for first name, last name, middle initial, mailing address, mailing city, and mailing zip, although mailing state is actually going to be another choice control that has been set as a dropdown. The reason that we're using text short controls so frequently in this form is that we're not doing many calculations where you might use something like a number control. Taking a closer at the mailing zip control, if we wanted to put some constraints on what the user could enter into this field, we could leverage some input validation such as a text mask. In this case, we would enter the pattern of 99999 to constrain them to only being able to enter 5 numerical digits. We've also added another yes-no control here to ask if their street address is different than their mailing address. In this instance, we only want to show these street address fields if this different street address control is set to yes. Let's go ahead and build this rule to see how you would set this up from scratch. On the Rules tab, we'll select Add New, we'll give the rule a descriptive name, and then we'll set up our if-then outcomes. In this case, if different street address is yes, then our street address info, which is the group that we've encapsulated those other controls inside of, is visible, else the street address info is not visible. And now if we preview our form, we can now see that our street address fields are not visible by default. However, if we set different street address to yes, they will become visible to the end user. For designers who have not used the group control before, the group control allows you to nest other controls within it, such as we're doing with this street address fields. This then also allows you to apply rules to the group itself, which will then be applied to all of the controls inside. This will save you time and energy when building rules within your form design. The next control on our form is going to be another text short that we've added some additional input validation to. In this case, for our phone number, we want the data entered in a specific pattern. And so you can see we're leveraging another text mask to make sure that we are capturing the data correctly. We're also providing a placeholder to let the end user know how we want this data entered into the form. Next, we have an email control, which is a control that has a predefined text mask to ensure that emails are being entered in a valid format. We then have a series of yes-no controls where we're asking the end user questions. In this case, we're displaying them as a toggle and with vertical alignment, although this can be updated back to a checkbox or horizontal alignment. We then also have some related date fields that will be valid if they select yes for their toggle control. Here at the bottom of our application information section, we've actually nested a group within a group. Inside here, we've asked them to list any foreign languages that they may be able to speak, read, or write. We've provided a text short control for the language name itself, and then a choice control for both speak, read, and write. The next section on this page is going to be our education, training, and skills section. This is where the applicant would fill in any of their previous employment history, as well as details about those positions. To facilitate this, we've actually captured all of these different controls within a group that we've named Position Details 1. And because we know that we want them to list at least 3 different historic positions, we've gone ahead and then copied this group and all of its controls down onto the next section of the form. We've then renamed this copy Position Details 2, and we've actually made another copy that we named Position Details 3. We've then added some yes/no controls for do you have another position to add, and then we will leverage rules to hide and show these next position listings based on the outcome of that control. Taking a look at these rules, you might be able to guess what the next section of our form is, and if we jump back into our designer, we can see here at the bottom a yes/no asking if they have a resume that they would like to add as well. We're using the file upload control to be able to capture this document upload. Next, we've included a space where they can provide references, and within this group, we've simply nested several text short controls that will capture the reference name, title, organization, and phone number. And finally, at the end of our form, we have the applicant's statement that certifies that what they have said is true and complete to the best of their knowledge, and then we ask them for a signature and the date that they are completing this application. To capture the applicant's signature, we are using a signature control, and then to capture the signing date, we're using a date-time control. Before we close out of the form designer and take a look at the workflow, I do want to take a moment to talk about how we added these header sections within our form. Within your group formatting, you can not only provide a rich text header, you can also add additional formatting options such as a header background, divider line, or making the entire group collapsible. Let's go ahead and now apply these changes and start taking a look at the workflow that will actually route and automate the information captured on this form. When leaving the form designer, you'll first be presented with a list of your variables that relate to the controls on your start form. These dynamic values can then be used throughout your workflow in your various different actions. As we spoke about earlier, the first action in this workflow is actually sending the applicant a note thanking them for their application and letting them know that we are reviewing their information. To do this, we're leveraging the send an email action from within our communication actions. Within our send application received action, we are using the dynamic email value that was captured on our start form. Within our message body, we are also leveraging the dynamic values of the user's first name and the position that they are applying for. Next in the workflow, we are going to log some of this information back into our SharePoint Online environment. While you may want to log all of the information that was captured on the request form back into your environment, for this example, I'm simply logging the title using the user's first name and last name, the position that they applied for, and the status of their application. In this case, our first status is HR review. And you'll note that our status is pulling back all the choice values dynamically from our SharePoint list of HR review, rejected, hiring manager, team lead, and approved. These will be the stages that one of our applications can go through. And as was talked about briefly earlier, the way that we're managing this approval process is leveraging a state machine, or the branch by stage action. If you open the logic and flow action set, within this, you can see the branch by stage and change stage actions. If we click into the branch by stage action, we can see that we can configure multiple different branches that the workflow can route through, as well as an initial stage where the workflow will start. In this case, we're starting with our HR review, and within this branch, we're going to use a task action. For this example, we're going to be using a form-based task instead of an express approval. The reason for this is that we want to present all the information that was submitted via the start form to these different managers, whether it's HR, the hiring manager, or the team lead, Each one of these approvers needs to be able to see the details that were originally submitted in the start form. If we go into our task action, we can then edit our form. And as you can see, we have all of our applicant information controls listed here on our task form. And the way that you can build this is that within the task form designer, you'll have access to all of the different start event variables. We then simply drag these back onto the form canvas in the same design, and that information will be presented in the same format to this task approver. Finally, down at the bottom, you'll have this task outcome that the approver needs to select either reject or approve. We then also want them to supply some comments. These comments will then be presented to the other approvers within the approval process. To then display this comment information to the next approver in the process, we simply need to go into our next task action, edit our form, and then within the designer, you will have access to the previous approver's comments as a control that can simply be dragged onto the form. Now that we understand how the task forms are configured, let's actually take a look at how you would progress through this approval process. Back under our HR review, if the user is rejected, we would go ahead and update the status within SharePoint Online to rejected. And the way that we're doing this is with our update an item action. And we're grabbing the item ID that was captured within our create an item action at the start of the workflow. We would next use our send an email action to deliver a notification to the applicant letting them know we have decided to move forward with another candidate for the position. And finally, we would use the change state action to actually exit the state machine. This is important as there always needs to be a change stage action at the end of each branch of a state machine. On the other hand, if the applicant was approved, we would again update the status within SharePoint Online to Hiring Manager as we're going to be moving to the next branch in the workflow. We would send an email to the applicant letting them know that we would like them to come in for an in-person interview, and then use our change stage action to actually update the state machine to the Hiring Manager branch. The process would then essentially repeat itself for both the Hiring Manager review and the team lead review. If they are approved by the hiring manager, we would then update that status to team lead, and we would change our state to team lead. And then if they were approved by the team lead, we would finally update their status to approved, and we would exit the state machine. Again, it is important that even at the end of our approved state, we still need to exit the state machine, as there always has to be a change state that resolves out the state machine within your workflow. And with that, we've now completed the walkthrough of our job application workflow. I hope this walkthrough has been helpful in showing how easy it is to design automated processes using Nintex Workflow Cloud. Please make sure to check out our other walkthrough videos, and we can't wait to see what you build next.